Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Lewis Reed represented the 6th Ward in the city of St. Louis for nearly 8 years as an alderman before he was elected president of the Board of Aldermen on April 3, 2007. No other African American in St. Louis history had previously been elected to that position. As president of the Board of Aldermen, Mr. Reed presides over the weekly Board of Aldermen meetings, assigns bills to each of 15 committees, and decides which alderman will sit on those committees. Aside from leading the Board of Aldermen, he also sits on a variety of boards and commissions within city government. In college, Lewis Reed majored in mathematics and computer science, and he's worked for Edison Brothers Stores as the Director of Networks and Telecommunication, and later for SSM Health as the Manager of Data Networks. It is our great pleasure to have him with us today, the Honorable Lewis Reed.
How you doing, Lee?
Good.
Thanks for having me today.
I'm very pleased to have you again. It's been, about a year and a half since you were here last. So,
yes. And I enjoyed our last conversation, by the way.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Most people, and by the way, this is, we're just now at our 9th anniversary going into our 10th year.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. We've, it's surprising the number of people who come here, because, you know, we're just this small show, but the people who come here and say, wow, I had a good time. I had an opportunity to say what I had in my mind without all that interference, without having to get it into a 30-second soundbite.
And that makes all the difference in the world, because there's a lot of things happening, you know, in local governments and cities and states all across the country, especially during the economic times that we're facing now. And, you know, the tough part is, how do you get that information out to people? And it's shows like yours that allow, you know, people like me and others to do that. So I really appreciate it, and thank you. And
well, I also want to
100 more years.
Thank you. I want to thank the folks at Double Helix that make sure that the program gets into the city of St. Louis, both on Channel 21 and 22. Now, there's several things that we're going to talk about here today, and right now this is January 19th that we're having this conversation. The program will be showing in February, so things may have happened in the interim that make us sound like we don't know what we're talking about. But at least at this point, this earning tax issue that has been proposed to remove from St. Louis City and Kansas City the ability to lay on a earnings tax is being proposed.
Yes.
And so I want to hear from you as to what you think of this issue and what the pros and cons from your position as the president of the Board of Aldermen in the city of St. Louis.
Yeah, I think number one, I think it's a good idea because it's another one of those factors that make us unlike other cities across the country. And some of the early studies show that cities, like St. Louis, when they're similar size, that have this earnings tax, where other cities grew throughout the 90s, cities like St. Louis with earnings tax did not grow in terms of employment in those cities, because when employers choose where they want to, open up their new business or relocate an existing business, they look at all those things. And if that's an X factor that they're not used to dealing with in another city, then they say, well, that's a reason not to come.
Right.
Even if you would take a look at the underlying numbers, and if the tax was shifted to something different, even if the net effect was almost equivalent, it's just one of those things that people aren't comfortable with doing. So, I'm certainly in support of it, and I'd like to see, I think we should continue to investigate and figure out how we can actually get rid of the earnings tax.
But that means you have to invent something new, right? Or sales tax, or or property tax, or
yes, and what
either that or cut the amount of money that you're spending by a third.
And I think all of those things. I think that number one, we have to streamline our city government. I mean, cities all across this nation are having to tighten their belt, and St. Louis isn't left out of that equation. We need to also tighten our belt in St. Louis. But what we're looking at doing, or some of the early proposals include replacing it with a land tax, and a frontage tax. Because if you take a look at an earnings tax where you're taxing, let's say you worked in the city of St. Louis and I'm putting a 1% tax on your salary.
My wife did, as a matter of fact. She worked downtown at May Company for, I don't know, many, many, many years. And so she wound up, lived in the county, came to the city, paid her 1%. Right.
Yeah, see, but the problem with that is that that tax is mobile. So when your wife moved or she went and got a different job someplace else, that tax was gone. Or if that job moves or it relocates or whatever, the tax is gone. But if you replace it with a land tax, that tax is fairly consistent, and you can do some projections, long-term projections on that. So, I'm supportive of it. I think that it would certainly help. It's one of the main reasons when people decide, when you talk to businesses to say if they're going to move to St. Louis or not, one of the topics right on the top is the 1% earnings tax.
Okay. Now, MasterCard at one time, weren't they in the city?
I'm not sure.
But I know that they
I know they have a location way out
they're
in
in St. Charles County now.
Yeah.
So you're open to the idea of this repeal, but you don't know how it might work, and you want more study.
Well, I want more study. Some of the early plans that we've looked at, I'm all the way there in terms of supporting it. What the final plan will look like, we don't know. That's when we get out. We need to have more discussions with some of the businesses, property owners, take a look at some other demographic data and that kind of stuff to see what the net effect would be. To understand that we're not going to put any undue burden on the residents that are in St. Louis, but also, create a more open and inviting environment for businesses and people who want to live, work, and play in our city. So.
Now, you also said that you'd be open to the idea of reducing the cost of running the government.
Yes, we need to, if you take a look, St. Louis isn't unlike any major city across this country in terms of, having major budget deficits during these tough economic times. So one of the things that we need to look at in St. Louis, as we're going through these economic times, is how do we shape our government and our spending so that it meets this new dynamic that we if you look out into the future 5-10 years, it's looking, pretty much like it's looking now. So, where, like all
and that's not good.
And that's not good. That's not good. So we certainly need to reformat our city government so that we can, our spending, so that we can, only spend what we take in.
You've got an area of North City that people are talking about revitalizing.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
Yes. Paul McKee, a developer, came in and proposed a very ambitious plan. It's a 30-year deal. It would create thousands of new housing units. It has a jobs component in it. It has a lot of green technology factored in it. And what it would do is completely renovate, most, not all, but a good part of North St. Louis where we see a lot of, vacant abandoned property. So he would go in, take these vacant abandoned properties. Some of them would be rehabbed, and some of them would be demoed and new housing units put in. Some of them would be demoed and new businesses would be put in. So we'd have economic centers also. So it would completely change the whole dynamic of our city. Because that's been the challenge is how do we, number one, attract the developers to develop in North St. Louis. We've had problems doing that in the past, and also a developer with the financial wherewithal and the means to do it. And it looks like this developer has been working for quite a while on a plan. And if so far the early stages is looking very promising, but like I said, it's a very long range deal. It's a 30+ year deal. Yeah.
Yeah, but it took 30 years to get in the condition that it's in.
At
It's
least
not like,
yeah.
I mean, you know, it's like what's going on in Haiti right now. I mean, people were expecting like miracles, like all of a sudden the army is going to show up and this is all going to be cured at once. It doesn't happen that way.
At
It
all.
takes time.
Yes.
Same thing going on in the city of St. Louis.